And so welcome everyone to today's Arborist Call on the 14th of November. The agenda for today's meeting is similar to usual. We'll start off with an update on the NU6 activation process, which is happening not too long from now. Then we'll have some updates from the Zcash Foundation on Zebra and also some updates from the ECC on the Zcash fees, Hashi, and wallet SDKs. And then after that, we'll do an update on Zcash delete application. Next up, we'll move on to research and implementation updates, such as the network sustainability mechanism, the trailing finality layer, Frost, and Zcash shielded assets. After that, we'll open the floor to announcements from anyone that has something to share. And also there'll be some time for open discussion. And I know there's at least one open discussion item from Single Labs. And yeah, so that's the agenda. What is the Arborist Call? The Arborist Call is a bi-weekly call where Zcash protocol contributors meet up to discuss upgrade timelines and process, protocol research and development efforts, design and implementation of new protocol features, and we try to identify any blockers and resolve issues. And the purpose of this call is to make Zcash protocol development accessible to interested parties and to provide more transparency for the community. Anyone can register to attend. If you want to present or become more involved, you can email us at arboristcall@zfmd.org and request a presentation slot. Finally, you can get involved in other ways outside of the Arborist Call. You can apply to one of the grant programs, and you can take part in community discussions on the Zcash MD Discord or the Zcash Community Forum. And there are clickable links for all of these at zcasharborist.org. So we can get started, and we'll start off with NU6 updates. So NU6 is due to activate on Saturday, the 23rd of November. Unlucky date, well, not unlucky date, but shame it's on a Saturday. I think some of us at the foundation are planning to, would like to coordinate with the ECC, maybe get on a call together around the time. I think it's around 9:30 a.m. UTC. So yeah, we'll just get on a call, monitor Zebra, Zcash D, and cross our fingers that everything goes smoothly, which there's no reason why it shouldn't. I don't know if anyone from ECC wants to share any updates or plans on what they were thinking for a NU6 activation date.
No specific engineering plans here.
Okay, cool. We should coordinate and see how we can how we can have a watch party together, maybe. Cool. Anything else from the foundation that we want to share? I think that's probably it. Okay. Let's move on then to Zebra updates. I think that's Mark today.
So in the last 2 weeks, there are 3 things that we got done. The first is the verification of transactions that spend mempool UTXOs. We had that PR open for a while, and we finally made it ready to be merged. Then we started replacing our JSON RPC server in Zebra because the one we're currently using is not maintained anymore. And then the last thing is the bug fixes for the get raw transaction RPC. We hope to merge that soon as well. That's all I have.
Great. Thank you, Marek. Any questions or comments, Marek? Okay, let's move on to updates from the ECC. I guess that's you today, Chris.
Yep, I'm it. So the major things that we've been working on the last 2 weeks are there's been a lot of zip editing work for NU7 zips. That's taken up a bunch of our time. Apart from that, Strad has now finalized I guess nearly finalized. It's in testing the partially constructed Zcash transaction format, the PCZT, which is used for hardware wallet integration that we're doing with Keystone, and will also be used for producing Frost. Trying to standardize on a partially constructed format that can be used for multi-party signatures. Then beyond that, we've in the wallet backend merged note management system that is primitive but should be adequately functional to help kill the tip the barista problem, so that your wallet maintains some distribution of spendable notes. And we also have put together a skeleton of the command line version of the Zcash or the wallet app that we're now fleshing out with functionality from our internal CLI application that we've been using for testing. So that is proceeding. I think that's it. That's all I can think of at the moment.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chris. Let's move on then to Zcash deprecation updates. I think from the foundation, we're just concentrating on filling out the RPC methods that we think Zcash is going to need to support. So they were included in Marek's update there, and also with Paku's help. Well, Paku's been doing a lot of the reach out, trying to figure out which other partners need which RPC methods. Any other updates from anyone? Anything I'm missing?
I don't know if someone from Zyno managed to join. Yeah.
Yeah, Arlo's here. I don't know if he wants.
Yeah, so one of the things I wanted to speak about was the get subtrees by index RPC, which is currently in Zebra and used by LikeWalletD, but it's not on the spreadsheet. I think there is, which is on there, Z get tree state is on the spreadsheet, but not get subtrees by index. So I don't know. I wanted to see if that should be on there and whether that's one Zyno should be taking responsibility for as well.
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I mean, the spreadsheet came from all of the public RPC documentation. I don't know why that's not on the spreadsheet. If it is on the website, I don't know if anyone has any more context or knows about the RPC method.
I think the spend before sync uses it or did use it at some point. Chris, is it still being used by the SDK? I think it is.
LikeWalletD uses it for which is get subtree roots gRPC service.
Yeah, that is pretty important. So
absolutely supported. Okay, brilliant. Yeah, so that was whether we should add that as one that Zyno should be kind of taking responsibility for, or whether that would be kind of down to
from my perspective, that does fall into the class of data that's derived from the chain and should be indexed and served efficiently. So it seems like it's in the right scope for something that Zyno takes responsibility for.
Yeah, no, brilliant. That's what kind of I had in mind.
Thank you for clarifying, Chris. Any other Zcash deprecation updates anyone wants to share?
No, from my side, had a few responses from like tier 3 exchanges. These are exchanges, the quote unquote KYC less kind of exchanges. Like, and many of them use the same provider, but some of them run nodes. So we have some responses, and I'm putting them on the spreadsheet. Apart from that, yeah, that's the only update I have for now.
Thank you, Papu. Anyone else? I think that's probably it. Okay, so let's move on to research and implementation updates, starting with the network sustainability mechanism. We can give an update on that today.
Hey, everybody. All right, so to start off, I wanted to recap what I had said on the previous Arborist call on Halloween. At that meeting, I mentioned that Shielded Labs was open to considering alternative proposals that did not involve activating all 3 existing zips in NU7. First, I mentioned that implementing zip 233, which establishes a voluntary burning mechanism, as part of NU7, since this is a non-controversial change that involves changing the transaction format, which is already happening with ZSAs. So we'd want to include that in NU7. Second, for ZIP 235, which burns 60% of the transaction fees, I said we were okay holding off on a consensus level change and instead updating the node software to default to 60% burning of the transaction fees. And then the objective here is that it would allow us to test it out before making a change to the consensus rules. And then for ZIP 234, which is the one that smooths out the issuance curve, I said we were open to holding off including it in NU7 to consider alternatives and to allow for more time to discuss the change with the community. All right, so then since the last Arborist call, we had a Twitter Spaces event, which was me, Nate, Zuko, and Chris also attended. And Chris mentioned or encouraged us to change ZIP 234 activation height, which at that time reflected the NU6 activation height, and moving it to something further out. So we made that update, though I think the precise activation height is still to be determined. All 3 zips, as originally envisioned as consensus level changes, have been submitted as candidates for NU7. In addition, we've been doing some community outreach and consensus gathering to gauge support for the NSM. But I think, like, at this point, we just need some additional direction. Obviously, our preference is for the entire NSM to be implemented into the protocol. But we're trying to be collaborative here and understanding of the concerns that have been raised on previous calls. We're open to alternatives. One thing that Strad mentioned on the last Arborist call was that he had thought of a way to reintroduce burn ZEC into circulation in a way that preserves halvings and wouldn't require smoothing the issuance curve. If this is true, and then I think it's something that should be written up for discussion with Shielded Labs and the community, and I think it's something that we should start now.
So I can respond to that quickly. Sure. So Dara, Emma, and Strad and I discussed that as a possibility. We opted not to write it up because it's essentially, I think, my position is that it makes the change harder to explain, and it doesn't actually provide sort of this. I don't know that it has any more merit than the existing proposal. So, we opted not to write it up just in favor of the existing proposal for ZIP 243.
You mean ZIP 234?
234, yes, thank you.
Okay.
Zuko?
There's the Russian Zcash ambassador, RU Zcash on Twitter, posted a graph of the ZIP 234 smoothing with the assumption that it would kick in at the time when the old halving style inflation rate was equal to the zip234 inflation rate, which is halfway between the second and third halvings. Anyway, I posted a link to that graph into the chat in this channel, so you can see that graph.
Nate?
Yes, hello. So another piece there, my math is bad, so I don't actually know if I believe that that activation height where the two equal is halfway between halvings, but I could be convinced. But what I did do was I took an old plotting library that I used to make an original blog post about this. So it has a graph that looks, oh wait, no, it is different than this one by RU Zcash, but it has a graph of issuance over time showing the two different kinds. And I just changed the code a bit to print out when the two cross over, like what height, because I wanted to improve the zip. I think it's 234 that currently has activation height TBD. And I'm not confident that that software picked the right height, but I posted details about that on a new issue on the zips repository, since the zip is already merged, but it has this TBD field. So I just wanted to start that conversation and make sure we're aiming for the right height and that makes sense to everyone. And also, if anyone wants to teach me some remedial or some math about exponentials, that would be helpful.
So one of the things that that factors in here, I don't think that we have to get that exactly right, because if we just pick as the activation block halfway through the next halving period, then it will be close enough. And the fact that if any ZEC is burned prior to that, it would adjust when the exact crossover is anyway. And it specifically would adjust up that you would get a slight bump upward in issuance, but very slight. It's going to be, tenths or hundredths or thousandths of a ZEC. So it's
good point.
It's negligible, right?
Let's just pick the block between the two halvings.
Yeah,
right halfway in between the two halvings, and then stop spending time on it.
Yep, exactly.
I'd be fine with that. And I don't know exactly if there are no burns. It's easy to calculate ahead of time. If there are burns, we don't know how many there would be. But I believe you that the amount of difference would be fairly low there. I would still be curious to calculate it ahead of time, just so nobody's surprised.
But whatever that block height is, and it would probably happen at some point like mid 2026, it would be included in NU6 for activation at that point in time, correct?
NU7.
I'm sorry, NU7.
Yeah, it should be implemented, and the zip should activate at NU7, but the actual change in issuance curve then activates at that block height.
Okay. So what are the next steps? Is there anything that we should be doing now as you go through your zip review process?
So from my perspective at this point, zip 233 and zip 234 are in good shape. The zip editors will essentially handle the changes to zip 244 and the V6 transaction format, because we have to integrate changes from multiple zips there. The only remaining question is zip 235. And the question there is, that's the one I think that needs the most community input of, does zip 235 activate in consensus at NU7, or does it activate, let's say, as essentially a standard rule of Coinbase transaction, or of the default Coinbase transaction construction that's produced by GetBlock template, and give miners the option to do it one way or the other, with an objective towards maybe codifying it in consensus in the future. The piece that I'm more interested in that's related to zip 235 but not exactly is whether the community is interested in burning fees for ZSA issuance,
Right.
because that's both potentially a larger burn amount, and I think that in terms of economic incentives, so because ZSA issuance is transparent, there is potentially some kind of dynamic that could advantage some miners over others with respect to mining ZSA issuance transactions. And I think that if ZSA issuance fees are burned, then that potentially has better sort of economic effects across the network, and it doesn't lend itself to any. I mean, I don't have a specific like MEV style attack in mind, but because it's transparent, it feels like there might be some kind of MEV thing that could happen there. And if the fees are just burned, then that removes an incentive for, miners to, I don't know, do selfish mining or something like that.
Good idea.
Okay.
So
Well,
that's more a question for the Kedit folks of, since I think, right now that's not a part of the fees, but
exactly.
it should be
But for us, getting it baked into the consensus rules sooner might help.
Yeah.
Might help Kedit be able to use that mechanism.
Yeah, we probably won't have a choice but to bake it as soon as possible, because the cycle for changes on fees that affects consensus, and we don't want to leave that as an afterthought.
Yeah. So I mean,
today we just have like paying a fee in the regular mechanism, so to miners, and a pretty hefty fee so that there's no spamming of ZSA.
Yeah, so that sounds fine to me. From my perspective, zip 233 and 234 are, I would like to see those in NU7. I hope that they get support from the community for inclusion. And yeah, then I hope that can be sort of settled relatively quickly, so that Kedit can depend upon that functionality being there for sort of finalizing the specification of ZSA fees.
Okay.
And implementation, actually. The specification, there's a zip, but implementation hasn't been done yet.
Okay, anything else on the network sustainability mechanism? Let's move on to trading finality layer question. Nate, is that you today, or?
I can start.
It's me. Yeah, it's me and Zuko.
I'm doing the scoping, what we're trying to accomplish and what we're not trying to accomplish, and Nate is doing building a roadmap. My update on scoping is that we got a lot of really thoughtful feedback from a whole bunch of people, including from Zcash Foundation and ECC and other places. And I'm working on integrating that feedback into our documentation. And you're all welcome to follow along. I'll paste the link in here. But the interesting part, if you guys are interested in privacy and staking, then you might be interested in this part. It's very subtle and confusing. But the overall big picture of what our goals, what are the big chunks that we're attempting to solve, and what things are we not attempting to solve, are stable and haven't changed since probably 2 Arborist calls ago. And I'll paste the link in here, and then Nate is doing the roadmap based on that. That's my update.
Yeah, so for my piece, so my focus is, okay, how can we deploy this eventually, like do all the engineering necessary for that? And so where like most of my days right now are focused on figuring out a roadmap and interviewing like engineers to help me. And for the roadmap, I've been working on a couple different approaches, but one is to take the scoping document, which lists a bunch of goals, and start putting those into GitHub tickets and then kind of working backwards. So I posted a link that goes straight to this label called scoping. So that should evolve as the scoping document evolves so that the lists align one-to-one. And then for each of those issues, here, let me try a screen share really quick. Okay, never mind, I can't do that. But if you just click on one of those tickets, you'll see, so far there's not much detail outside of the scoping document, except some of them have, okay, click on one that says UX goal, such as users run validators and get rewards, number 16. And you'll see that lists a prerequisite ticket. So some of these have prerequisites, and those prerequisites are kind of the end engineering goals for our team. And this is still sort of early and brainstormy, but it's already been helpful for us to make some decisions such as, we want users to be able to delegate stake, for example, but we are not going to be making a wallet or, and we're still debating how much we want to like write wallet guidelines or not. But what we've settled on is we want to work with wallet vendors and make sure that the protocol is clear to them. If they have any, they know how to implement what needs to be implemented for their users. And they are basically satisfied, at least like one or hopefully more good wallet vendors. And then the same for exchanges, centralized exchanges. And then we'd also like to get like a DEX project or a bridge project, not necessarily to commit to deploying something, but to be very interested and to be looking at it and to be saying, yes, this could work for our purposes. So I think
What about
that's
Maya
kind of,
DEX?
yeah, I mean, in my opinion, what we want is by the end, any one high quality partner in each category is sort of the goal, to know at least one is satisfied, but ideally most of them would be satisfied. And so that's sort of how we're cutting the scope for our engineering effort. So our engineering effort will be focused mainly on working out the design of the protocol, producing patches to a full node, Zebra, that implement that. And then one big piece that's still less clear to me is how much of the validator stack we will be providing directly in software. But presumably enough, to be able to start validating maybe from the command line, something like that. We're still trying to figure that piece out. But anyway, the big summary is we're going backwards from the scoping document to figure out where we're headed and what the implications are. And the main implication is we want to make sure we're working with partners so that our scope and focus could be more narrow because we're a tiny team. So if you're interested, stay in touch. It'll be a little while before we're ready to show anything useful that's not already just on GitHub for any of those partners. But when that day comes, we'll make sure and start getting louder on Arborist calls and asking for feedback or setting up meetings, like, hey, come help us watch this thing develop and give us feedback.
Great.
Yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Nate. Any questions or comments for Nate or Suko?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So are there any veterans of staking that you guys are like consulting, like please give us your wisdom, or is this like a such a different thing with like UTXOs that it doesn't apply, or how do you approach past wisdom?
It's not very different because the UTXOs don't touch the staking side, so the staking side is very similar.
Yeah, another way to answer that is that Crosslink is sort of a protocol for plugging together two different protocols. One would be a staking protocol, or actually for us, for now, one is a staking protocol, but we haven't picked the staking protocol, and doing that and then adapting it to work with Crosslink requires answering a bunch of questions that would be relevant to staking experts. So we are chatting with some. And also when we're hiring, we're looking for, like we've seen some candidates who have worked on proof of stake protocol nodes, which is the kind of candidate which would be really good for this, because I don't have that direct experience.
It's a good idea, John.
Yeah.
Thanks.
One more piece is in my sort of approach that I would like to do is just start prototyping something, even though the design has a lot of gaps in it. And then after we kind of get stuck with the prototype and making progress, then start engaging more seriously with the design.
I'm hearing subtext of, well, when Claude and O1 preview are not good enough for me, I'll go hit the heavy ones.
Maybe. I actually haven't seen Claude yet, but
Highly recommend.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Let's move on then. We have Frost up next. Conrado?
Yep. So the last few things that happened in Frost were that we merged the Taproot PR or BIP340 PR, which is something that is a cipher suite, which is useful for Bitcoin, but is also useful for Zcash since it will be used for the issuance of ZSAs. So that was cool. It just did found a small issue. I'll create a PR to fix it, but it's nothing big. And it will make into the next release of Frost Core. And the cipher suite it's create itself. There will be a new crate just for the cipher suite. We also merged support for refresh shares functionality using the DKG, right? So if you want to, you have a bunch of shares and maybe you want to exclude someone from the group or just refresh everyone's shares out of precaution, you can do that using a distributed protocol, which is also neat without changing the group public key. And what we'll work on next is basically finishing the Frost server. Like functionally is reddish, but we need to add support for the DKG using the server, right? Only the demo code we have is just no copy and paste stuff still for the DKG. So we want to add support to do the DKG using the server, and also some final touch to the server to make use HTTPS, stuff like that, making more production ready. And hopefully we'll get that done by the end of the year. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Thank you, Conrado. Any questions for Conrado on Frost?
I do have one small question. When you mean like excluding someone, um, is that like removing it from the group for good, or can or do the old shares still work if the excluded person?
Yeah, the old shares still work, which is why you need to be careful, right? It's not sufficient that, um, for example, you have like 2 out of 3, right, group, and you find someone is malicious or they lost the share, the share was compromised. You want to remove them from the group, then you can do that, and you can add another person, right? And everything works because you work on the assumption that always 2 out of 3 people are honest, right? But if another person from the original group was also compromised, then you can still compromise the whole wallet. So refresh share is not like a panacea for solving security issues, right? It's just like a best effort precaution in the case of someone losing or getting the share compromised. But the best defense against this is to choose a appropriate threshold, right? Something that you it'd be very difficult to compromise that amount of shares. But alongside the life of the group, right? Even if you refresh shares, right, at a specific point in time, it needs to be true that a threshold of participants will be trusted. And maybe like in the case for Zcash wallet, for example, it would be good like at some point in time you actually do a full migration, right? You create a new wallet and migrate all the funds. And with that, you have 100% sure that the old shares won't work because the old shares will be out of a empty wallet.
Yep. Awesome. Yeah, just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, it's a tricky issue that it can be dangerous, so it's good to emphasize that. Yeah.
I think we clarified that on our documentation as well
we
now.
did. We had some feedback regarding that, and we added some disclaimers.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions or comments on Frost? Okay. So finally, Zcash shielded assets. Vivek, any updates for us today?
Yeah, hi. So I think the updates we have are like largely with 2 main areas of focus this time. It's the ZSA zips, like Chris was mentioning, and Zebra. So starting off with the zips, earlier pull request, which was pull request 854, was merged around the NU7 zip deadline. And our zips are in the consideration for NU7. We received some reviews and comments on the zips around that time, and some issues have been opened recently. So thanks zip editors and Dera for all that work. We've been working on these issues. We've responded to some of the issues, and we've opened a new pull request now. That's pull request 960. If anybody wants to take a look. One of the changes that got discussed recently that I think we are close to like pushing into that pull request is a forward-looking change where we are adjusting the V6 transaction format so that it can smoothly support swaps for ZSA in the next upgrade, ideally. So the change is such that it shouldn't need too much implementation overhead for NU7 that we already have implemented. And at the same time, it'll also lessen the need for a second transaction format change again in the next upgrade. So that's there on the zips front. We are still actively working on fixing the other issues that are open, and we'll be talking with the zip editors over the coming weeks. On the Zebra front, we have created a few like step-by-step PRs with like breaking up the work that we've done, and we've been working with the Zcash Foundation to peer review that work so that we can have it ready for merging soon. Like we get everyone on the same page regarding those changes. We are progressing on adding the issuance support in Zebra and the issuance state. That's work that's still ongoing. Besides this, regarding swaps, we have made an implementation of the swaps for ZSA in the Orchard crate. I think that's ready pretty much. We've also alongside been improving our zip as we've been implementing stuff, and there's one thing that's pending is if we change this transaction format for V6 itself, then we'll be removing some of that redundancy in the asset swap zip. Yeah, finally, regarding transaction acceptance, we made an initial presentation of the work we've done there earlier this week to DERA. We got some feedback, and yeah, we should be making that report available sometime soon as well. I think that's all I have for the general update.
Great, thank you, Vivek. Any questions or comments for Vivek or the Get team? Great. Let's move on. Does anyone have any announcements that they'd like to share?
I have just a comment on what Vivek said. The fact that we're merged in the zips and we're preparing to merge with pull requests and working, it's very significant for the Caddy team. It's after so much time being trying to chase, first Zcash D and Zebra, and then progress in Zcash in general, and chasing with our side forks. We're finally at this point where we see that this is becoming real. Very exciting, and also a lot of responsibility because it's a lot of trust in the feature itself. So we're aware of that. Vivek didn't mention, but there's an ongoing security audit for the core protocol that's not finished, but it's the timing is supposed to be in parallel to this merging work. So thanks for the entire Zcash community for putting the effort to review this and make this a real thing. I asked the team, when can we put together sort of a webinar to explain, a series of webinars to explain more in detail what was done, how do you hold it and run it and see ZSAs move around and make it concrete for people. And as soon as we can, we'll announce just 3 sessions of 40 minutes where it will remind a bit of what we described in Zcon, the various Zcons, but it's from the perspective of what ended up being in the protocol and how do you actually use it now that we know what it looks like. So this is soon. Can't put a date yet, but that's what we're aiming for.
That's great. Thank you for sharing, John. Any other announcements? Okay, let's move on to open discussion. Does anyone have any other topics? Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I have one thing for Zcash community grants. Han had submitted an updated proposal for his proof of balance coin holder voting mechanism. He did a very nice presentation using GitHub pages, but I just wanted to flag this for the core developers and the node implementers for your review. The next meeting where we plan to vote on this proposal is November 25th, which is a Monday. So if possible, we'd appreciate getting your feedback before that date. Chris had some questions and comments for Han, but one thing that we're particularly interested in is sort of an overall risk assessment of the changes and improvements he's looking to make. Since Dara Emma is not on the call today, I can, you know, message Z separately. But Pili, is it possible for somebody at ZF to have a look at the proposal over the next week or so and let us know if you have any feedback?
Yeah, we can do that. I'll take a note of it. And thank you for giving us plenty of notice. Yep. Any questions or comments for Jason on that? Otherwise, we'll move on to Arlo.
Yeah, I wanted to discuss essentially the protocol for the RPC services that Zyno will be taking over from Zcash. Currently, they're JSON RPC services. I wanted to see if there was any possibility that we could implement them as gRPC services instead. I don't know if that's at all possible.
So my position here, what I would like to see is we will need to be able to provide JSON RPC services for support of existing, exchange partners and so forth. That seems like it's just something that we have to have. However, the architecture there could be that a JSON RPC service is layered over or is just a proxy layer for an underlying gRPC service that might be, built in a more sort of cohesive and modern fashion. Because, for example, if you look at the Zcash RPC services, there are several places where those existing RPC APIs are like functionality is split up between multiple RPC methods where you really would want all of the results in a single call. And so I think what we ought to be doing there is designing sort of the correct, the semantically correct RPC method that we want going forward. And whether that's exposed via gRPC or some other mechanism is kind of not that important, so long as then the existing Zcash RPC methods could be implemented in terms of that like correct semantic RPC interface.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it kind of goes on. Is there, so like currently there's the Light Wallet gRPC services that are kind of specified, and then there's a separate kind of load of Zcash RPC services. So would it make sense for us to replace the compact ZX streamer with Zcash indexer service that can encompass all of the indexes that need to be served both for light wallets and for wallets and block explorers, and then we could build the JSON RPC services from that?
I mean, I think that sounds right. Is again the way that I would approach this is, let's start by, irrespective of gRPC or JSON RPC, let's just define the actual set of operations that we require at a semantic level, and maybe implement those in terms of Rust traits or something like that, so that their semantics are fixed.
Sorry, that was what. Yeah, that was what I was talking about. I was kind of, so like currently there's two separate services, one specified for light wallets and one specified for wallets and block explorers. Like, is it something where we can essentially reform that into just one specification, or do we want to keep those two separate?
Yeah, I think that the light wallet API is again sort of downstream of this set of indexes or set of RPC methods for that is the correct the modern correct set of operations. The light wallet protocol itself is kind of it's kind of hacky and organically grown more than designed, or designed in the context of a different set of requirements than we currently have. So it's better to just work from a foundation that can support it, but not be tied to it.
Okay, brilliant.
Okay. Any other items up for discussion? Okay, seems like maybe not. In that case, thank you everyone for joining today, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time at the later time of 21 UTC. Double check your calendars. We've had daylight savings changes happening in some places in the world, not in other places. So,
and it's a holiday in the US.
yeah. Oh, yes. Yes. So anyway, watch out for that and see you then. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye for now.
Bye.
See you. Bye.
Thank you.